Enter the mysterious world of Paranormal M, where the supernatural takes center stage. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for captivating stories. Let the haunting journey begin. Chased a shadow figure twice. I've had at least 2 encounters with shadow people. Both times were when I was asleep. The first, I know without a doubt, I accidentally astral projected. I don't know how, but I could just feel that I was. Keep in mind, the room I slept in had like this full standing mirror. Well, rather, there were 4, and there were doors. They were on my closet directly across from my bed. Yeah, not great. One night I woke up, my body, if you will, at least, without looking at my body, and I looked over to my right only to be met with a young woman next to my bed, clearly in distress. I could see her distinct features like I'd be looking at a living person. She didn't say a word to me, but I could feel she was terrified and she needed my help. I turned my head to look in front of me, and there was a shadow figure standing at the front of my bed. It definitely startled me. I immediately felt he had dark intentions toward this woman. And yes, I said he because it absolutely felt masculine without a doubt. I didn't see any eyes or distinct features, only what I was feeling from him. I don't know why, because I've been made aware that it isn't a common reaction. Instead of cowering in fear from the shadow figure, I flew out of my bed and chased that fucker out of my room and down the hall into my parents' room. Only to then feel myself get yanked back into my body. It's the best way I can describe that sensation. It had felt like I wasn't bogged down with a physical body, and the feeling I experienced was like flying after the shadow person. It felt so natural, like I didn't even have to think about how to do it. I could move more freely, like however I wished, weightless. It was like I was all of my consciousness. Then I woke up physically after being pulled back, if you will. The next experience felt like a shadow figure was invading a dream I was having. That's because I felt my awareness shift to where it didn't feel like a dream anymore. I was dreaming that my husband and I were watching TV, and then he said something that was completely left field and a little bit dark. Then I turned my head to look in front of me, and there's another shadow figure right in front of me just watching me. I'm looking directly at them. I can feel that this part was real. I could feel that the shadow figure was interfering with my dream. I asked quite demandingly, "Who are you?" I didn't say a word, and just observed. Then they turned, and I could feel that they were intending to leave without answering me, and again I felt myself fly and lunge after the shadow person, to which they then disappeared out of the wall. Then I woke up physically. Can anyone give me insight to any of this? I know it wasn't sleep paralysis because I wasn't physically awake. It's like all of this was happening when I was asleep, but not asleep. I was definitely astral projecting the first time, and then the second time I was at least lucid, if not astral projecting as well. I think that's the best way I can describe it. Has anyone experienced this type of thing along the same lines I have, meaning with how AI reacted by going on the offense? I hope you mean I. I'd love to know more about these shadow people. Like, what do they want? Or are they just observing? I believe my childhood home was or is haunted. Wow, shocking title, I know, but this still gives me the chills. As a child, I had a lot of bad experiences at my childhood home. A lot of abuse, incidents, and overall just bad vibes. Very rarely did people feel at ease. I was always terrified of the basement of that house. I don't know why, but growing up it was the scariest thing ever. I'd also refused to sleep alone until I was probably 9 years old. I was terrified of the mirror hanging over my bed. Mirror hanging over your bed? I remember being downstairs and walking past a cabinet that held my grandmother's fine china. It flew open at me and shattered in the ground. None of it had hit me somehow. Still shocked to this day how that had happened, as the cabinets had been jammed and impossibly hard to open. Something similar to this was a large, heavy portrait of a bullfighter falling behind me. You could argue it just gave out after years of being hung up, but the nail was fine. After my grandmother had died, things had gotten weirder. That's when I finally agreed to sleep alone. And when I'd sleep in my bed, I could feel large hands stroking my back. I reported this to my mom one year, and she said that she had felt that too before. Sometimes it made me incredibly uncomfortable. Other times it would feel calming, as if someone else was trying to soothe me to sleep. I also began to hear voices call me from downstairs. Specifically my mother's, which I'd never lived with my mother until I was about 12 or 13, since they were divorced. So, being the freaked out kid I was, I'd yell back down the stairs or taunt it back. This probably was kind of even worse for me. Then my father died. It was just me and my grandfather alone in the house. Can't remember if I'd hear the voices calling out to me or not, but I began to have terrible nightmares. I had nightmares from the perspective of something that was watching me sleep. Its vision was green, almost like night vision. It was standing in my doorway just watching me. It had left and turned the corner down the hallway that led to my deceased father's room. In my dream, I woke up from the nightmare and screamed at it from the room. This prompted it to turn back around and start returning to my room. I woke up from that nightmare. Eventually, my grandfather got too sickly to care of me, so I moved out to live with my mother. To this day, that house has been the only place I've ever had experiences like that. I once visited it with my uncle before they renovated and cleaned it up. Toured the house again and realized it was even more disgusting than I realized. The floors were rotting. The sinks were full of dirt, and just overall the house looked terrible. When we went through the basement and turned around to go back in, I realized we'd been locked out. We had to go through the gate that surrounded the backyard. I realized that the house, or whatever was in it, clearly didn't welcome me there anymore, and I'm fine with that. Years later, I've never visited that place again, and I can only wish the family currently residing there the best of luck. LOL. A light. To share my experience, I was about 12 or 13 when I was in a very bad place in my life. I was filled with rage and negative thoughts. I had an abusive father, and I was planning to kill him. The reason I'm sharing this is to share my state of mind at the time. I always liked drawing, and I kept drawing dead people, and I was fascinated with death. One day I'm home drawing, and while I used to draw just black and white and red, and that day I started to draw a flower. And that's when I noticed it was kind of odd. It was colorful. My drawing process, I don't always think of what to draw, I just let my imagination flow. When I started to notice that was odd, I saw what seemed to be a spotlight. It was very bright light, and it was in front of me, and it spoke. I was fully awake, and it felt ancient. It didn't speak with actual words. I don't even know how to explain, but it was in my mind. Sometimes it would speak through projecting images instead. It asked if it could come in. I don't recall my exact reaction. I remembered thinking if it could be a bad choice to say yes, but I agreed to let it come in, not even understanding exactly what it meant. It was in front of me. I think I agreed because it didn't seem like a threat. I recall very little of what we talked about. I remember bits and pieces, and it didn't tell me in the end. Maybe I was meant to forget. I'll try to describe it the best way I can. When I agreed to let it in, I felt a huge, overwhelming, powerful feeling of love. Truly loved in a deep and infinite way. Next, I asked it if it was an angel. I went to Catholic school, but I wasn't religious. Still am. Or rather, still not. To which it replied no. I asked if it was God, to which it also replied no. I asked what it was, and it showed me, but I don't understand it. Seemed like a very ancient being, older than what I could imagine time is. Like if it existed before time existed. I asked more things and curiosities of a 12-year-old, like why is there so much pain in the world? Why are we here? What's the point to all this? To which it replied, I don't remember all the answers. I distinctly remember seeing parts of the world like if it were in real time. Some appeared to be visions. In the end, it went away. I remember my mom coming into the room and thinking, why can't she see it? That's how I realized it was in my head. When it went away, it told me one day I was going to try to kill myself and not to do it. Made me promise I wouldn't, which I did. Such thought never entered my head at the time. Also asked me not to waste time trying to learn more about it and to move on, to which I agreed, and finally once it left, I felt clean inside, like all the negativity was washed away. This experience was very deep for me, changed who I was since then. I remember asking if it would, or rather if I would see it again, but don't remember the answer. Most likely no, because I haven't seen it since then. I did try to kill myself many years later, and I remember promising I wouldn't, and that's how I'm still here. I also failed to not try and find more information about what that was. I did look for more people who might have seen the same, and found odd connections. Possible demon. I'm 20 years old now, and I experienced a possible demon when I was growing up in my old house. For some context, witchcraft is very common in my culture, and I do believe that there is also a cause because my grandpa had a mistress in El Salvador who wanted us out of the picture. She regularly practiced witchcraft. My mom is my grandpa's favorite child, and throughout my childhood she had many near-death experiences. And it would make sense, since if my grandpa dies, his money goes to my mom first. The first time I noticed something was off was when I was around 6 years old. My family had just picked my mom up from dialysis, and we were all sitting in the kitchen eating. And all of a sudden, I hear a whoosh sound from behind me. We all turn around because we heard it, and it was weird. The second instance was when I would see shadow figures in my room and my door. I was never allowed to close my door, and when I would wake up in the middle of the night, I usually saw a shadow standing in the hallway, and sometimes in my closet, since I always keep that door open. Sometimes I would see the figure sitting in the chair I had in my room. We would just stare at each other. I believe it's the top hat man because I always saw the hat. The third instance was when we had a family living with us in our basement. And for context, corporal punishment is very common in Latino and Hispanic families. We would often hear the mom discipline her son and hear his screams. We would check on him all the time because something sounded like he was being murdered. One night, my mom, grandma, and I came home from church at around 11 p.m., since Saturday service was at night and it was 3 hours. We were talking in the kitchen when all of a sudden we hear the loudest scream. It sounded like the boy, but this time it sounded like he was being stabbed to death. We immediately ran downstairs, but to our surprise, no one was there. We checked all the rooms and the family wasn't there. The fourth instance was when I was still little and I couldn't stop crying. I don't remember much of it, but the pastor of my church came with his wife to pray over me. We went to a room downstairs and the door was left open. He put oil on my forehead and began praying. I never closed my eyes for prayer, so I just stared outside the door, and that's when I saw a black shadow figure walk by the door. It looked inside before disappearing. The fifth instance was when I was around 11 years old. I began feeling like someone was watching me all the time. I felt intense fear and hatred being home. I felt anxious and paranoid every time I was home, which is something that I've really never had happen. The sixth instance was the scariest because it was physical. I came home exhausted from a soccer tournament, did my night routine, and fell asleep on my back. And for context, my bed had plastic on the mattress since little kids often slept on the bed when family would come over and spend the night. During the night, I woke up because something was pulling on my left arm and leg trying to pull me off of my bed. I could hear the plastic moving and felt someone breathing on me. I heard a bunch of whispers, but I couldn't understand them. Then I heard a woman begin to laugh in my ear. I couldn't move, and something was on top of me, and I felt a strong urge to open my eyes, but I didn't. I began praying, and then it went away quickly. I didn't open my eyes for the rest of the night, and the next morning I told my aunt about it because it terrified me. She told me something similar had happened to her, but she was laying on her stomach. She said she woke up and felt something sitting on her back, heard the woman laughing. Then she said something like, "Who is your God?" So she started praying and it all went away instantly. My mother's village experience. What happened to my mother during this experience of hers is kind of hard to describe with one word. It's like a premonition, but rather than feeling like something bad was about to happen, it's the feeling something bad happened long ago. The situation my mother experienced was a long time ago. I wanted to post it not to ask for answers, but to share her experience. My mom was born, and for the first 18 years of her life, she lived in Greece. When she was 14, she took a trip together with her father, uncle, aunt, and 2 cousins to my grandfather's village in the Peloponnese, I believe, southern Greece. It's called Tripiti. Since they all came from my mother's city, Larissa, in Thessaly, a province in central Greece. Since it was a long journey, the 5 of them stopped by a village along the way before reassuming the trip. My grandfather then took my mother on a little walk around the small village. She told me she was having a really bad time with her family and there was no reason to be upset, sad, or distressed as she was in the village. As they were walking, my grandfather decided to take my mom to this hill on the outskirts of town. As they were approaching this hill, my mother just felt a feeling of dread. She felt almost panicked, sad, and disturbed. She said to my grandfather it felt like something was crushing her heart. My grandfather then took her away from the hill to a local tavern where the rest of her family was at. Once at the tavern, and with the tavern owner also expressing concern over my mother explained as they were near the hill what she had been feeling. Then when she was done, my grandfather and the tavern owner explained to her what happened at that hill. Before I do, the reason I decided to not say the name of the village until now is because it would give away to some what happened here. The village's name was Kalavrita, I believe. Somebody correct me. From 1941 to 1944, Greece was occupied by Nazi Germany, and Kalavrita fell under their control too. In response to the killing of 78 captured German soldiers, the Germans set their sight on destroying the town. They looted buildings, commandeered livestock, and rounded up civilians. They then took the entire male population consisting of older boys to seniors to the top of that hill my mother was near. They then executed 438 of them at once, leaving only 13 survivors. Thing is, though, while today there's a memorial that stands at the top of the hill, back then there was nothing for my mother to know about what happened at the site. Along with that, my grandfather didn't get the chance to tell her when they arrived at that hill. Kind of strange, come to think of it, but at the same time it intrigues me as much as it disturbs me. My mom didn't believe me until our roommate saw the same thing. A little bit of backstory. Growing up in my childhood house, I was deathly afraid of the basement. You know, being a kid, I had no rhyme or reason as to why. This had gone on the whole time I lived in the house. We lost the house when I was 13 to divorce, and that happened between my mom and my stepdad. 4 years later, due to my stepdad putting the house into foreclosure, my mom got the house back when I was 17. So when we were moving back in, my mom asked me to put food in the freezer. I told myself, I'm older, I'm not going to be afraid of the basement anymore. With the newfound confidence, I went to the laundry room where the freezer was. As I went to turn on the light, which was just a string attached to a light bulb in the ceiling, in the corner of my eye I saw a little girl. She was whitish and see-through, with shoulder-length hair and a white dress. Maybe about 10 years old, with my hand still in the air, I turned away from the girl and slowly walked out of the laundry room, trying to be calm. I walked out, and when I hit the stairs, I ran up the stairs on all fours. Got to my mom's, trying to tell her what it is that I saw, and she brushed it off. About a week later, her roommate told my mom that while she was doing her makeup downstairs in her room, the one next to the laundry room, with her door open, the way she had her mirror placed was in front of the door and she could see into the hallway. She described the same little girl standing in the door way off to the side. She was freaking out and told my mom. My mom asked her if she'd talked to me about this, and if I'd told her anything about what I saw. She said no. She confirmed it with me, and I said no, I haven't told her. My mom finally believed me, started to freak out. Weird stuff kept happening in that house, probably until I moved out. I'm 32 now, and I've been in and out of my mom's house since I first moved out when I was 19. Nothing's happened. Until about 3 months ago, we've been hearing weird shit. I'd tell those stories another time. If you made it this far, thanks for hearing me. Can't wrap my head around it. Tried to rationalize myself, saying it's a hallucination because I'm schizoaffective, but how come our roommate experienced the same girl? My sister's ghost. I'm a medical examiner, and I've had many paranormal experiences. I'm not usually taken aback when things happen. I just respect that we're in their space, especially with how invasive we have to be. I let them get out their frustrations. I respect them in a way. Fast forward to 5 years into working in the office. Just graduated and finished residency. I got a job immediately in my local coroner's office. I've had countless experiences and not shocked by anything anymore. I'm performing an autopsy and I've just finished up. Done my prayers and I just sort of do that out of respect, especially if I know their beliefs. Walked into my office, shut the door, sat down at my desk and looked up. There's a teen girl. She just looked at me. She wasn't a patient of mine, nor had she been in the past, and I had no idea who she was. Weeks pass, and I can't get her face out of my head. Can't place where I would know her from, nothing. I had absolutely no idea who she was. About 3 days after I gave up, she showed me again, or rather showed up again. She walked up to me and hugged me. She breathed, "I'm so sorry," and disappeared. She went through me and disappeared rather than really hug me, I guess. That shook me to my core. About a month later, I came across an old photo. A girl with my other sister. Brought it to my mother. She sat me down and told me some disturbing truths. Before I was born, my oldest sister passed away due to a drunk driving accident. They were going the wrong way and hit her. And after I was born, my sperm donor, that's what I call him, admitted that the reason he wanted me was to replace the daughter he lost. I have never met my sperm donor. My sister has rejected him completely. He considered 2 non-bio girls his daughters and doesn't care about us. That girl was my sister, I believe. She was younger in the photo, but looked super close. I don't know if I'd just seen the photo and had a hallucination or my sister is roaming this earth. Is it bad that I hope that I was hallucinating instead of her being trapped on this earth as a spirit? Not really. Feel bad, but also want her to be at peace. Or want to be able to talk to her. Maybe put some closure, and I maybe need this after finding all that out. I'd be grateful to know that she'd left the earth, even if I don't know everything. Just booked it from my apartment without any shoes on. Shadow figure. So there I was, barbecue sauce on my titties, taking a leak in my bathroom. We have towels hung from the door, and out of the corner of my eye I see a towel move, like someone grazed against it. I quickly turned my head to look, and it absolutely was moved. It was just coming to a halt when I got my head fully squared to it. I finished doing my business while feeling a little freaked out. Quickly zipped it up, washed the barbecue sauce off my titties, and exited the bathroom. Then I fucked up. I remember seeing shadow figures on the internet. Out of morbid curiosity, I decided to give it a little check. While standing in the doorway to the restroom, I flipped the lights off and stared into the abyss. I clenched my ass so fucking tight, and my eyes got so fucking wide when holy fucking shit, I swear to God, there's a silhouette of a person standing right smack fucking dab in the middle of my bathroom. I stared at it for about a second before turning the light back on, and it was gone. I wanted to shout, run, and do something, but God, I just had to check one more time. I switched the light off for just a millisecond, and right the hell there was a shadow figure again. But this time it had its arms stuck sort of grotesquely in the air for some awful reason, and looked farther away from me. As soon as I registered, I flipped the light on as fast as possible and booked it out of the apartment. I essentially jogged backwards from my illuminated bathroom until I made it to the living room. Didn't put on shoes for a coat and forgot to grab my keys. Right now I'm on a bench in the nearby park freezing my nipples off. Neither of my roommates are home, and I absolutely don't want to go back in there alone. I think I have about 45 minutes to kill until my roommate gets off work. I don't want to call him about it, and it sounds like I'm a maniac. My plan is to freeze out here for a while. Then when they drive up, I'll by chance be returning from my evening stroll and re-enter the apartment with them. That was different. Dead lady screaming at me. I rented a condo in Hawaii at the Hilton Turtle Bay on the north shore of Oahu. FYI, can get a condo for a week on the hotel grounds for cheaper than a 2-day stay at the hotel. I wish that applied to me. I arrived from Cali, put my stuff down, headed out for the beach. After dark, I came back and eventually went to bed. The main bedroom was upstairs. As I'm trying to go to sleep, a woman screams at me from a couple of feet away, telling me to leave. It was more like, get the fuck out. I'm shocked and I'm rattled a bit, and I say to myself, hitting a hypnagogic or whatever it's called hallucinations. Try to make myself go back to sleep. Fall asleep and get screamed at again a few minutes later. Get out of the bed saying to myself, shit, rented a haunted condo. And then I say, I'm not leaving. I paid for a week. Leave me alone. I won't sleep in your bedroom, but I'm not leaving. The next day, my good friend shows up, and I tell him that he can sleep in the main bedroom. He gives me a calculating look. So that night, after some fun adventures, we head upstairs to go to sleep. I sit on the couch watching the news. He comes walking down about 30 minutes later and says that I'm a serious dick for not warning him. I innocently ask him what he's talking about. He says some lady was screaming at him upstairs. I crack up and tell him he's going to have to sleep in the couch then. Spirits in my house. In 2011, me and my mother, my grandmother, and my then stepfather moved into a new house. And over the course of the last 13 years, we had multiple events that we cannot explain rationally. First event. The first event was about a month after moving in. I was on my bed. I was trying to fall asleep, or was I simply chilling? I don't remember. I was 19 at the time, and I'm now 32. I was laying there, and suddenly I heard a voice right above me. Some sort of evil voice saying gibberish. It didn't last long, but it was scary. I thought that my brain played a hell of a trick to me. A year later, I was with my mother in the car, and out of the blue, she asked me if anything strange ever happened to me in the house. I was taken by surprise and didn't know what to answer. But then I remembered the voice. So I told her. She was flabbergasted. She too heard a voice in her room, and more precisely, a laughter. She says that she and my then stepfather were in bed, and she heard a strange sound, like the sound of plastic wrapper being manipulated. My stepfather, we're going to call him Bob, used to eat lots of candy, and he was laying on his side, so maybe it was him. Bob, is that you making this sound? Bob wakes up confused and says, no, I'm sleeping, and he goes back to sleep. My mother thought it was weird when 2 minutes later she says she heard a demonic laughter come out of the corner of her room. She panicked and yelled at Bob to stop this bullshit. Bob woke up confused. He was sleeping. So to make this clear, a normal family moved into a new house, and after 2 months of them heard voices in their room. That happening once is already random as hell. But to two people, what are the odds? But it doesn't stop there. Second event. My mother and Bob went to visit friends of theirs, and during the evening, one of them asked just like, hey guys, what do you think about spirits and paranormal? Do you believe in it? My mother didn't say a word at the time. And Bob, an ice block of a man too proud to show vulnerability, opens up and claims he heard the computer chair moving downstairs. And at the moment, my mother gasps and says, what, you heard it too and didn't tell me? Now, we'd have two adults saying that they heard the computer chair moving by itself at the same time on two different occasions. There's no suggestion possible because they both heard it and didn't tell the other. What are the odds? Couldn't possibly be the cat because it was a little 5-pound cat. She would have had to jump with all her force on the chair, then jump back on it and have the chair roll back exactly where it was on two different occasions at the same hour. Plus, with the chair against the wall, she couldn't possibly gain enough momentum to move back where it was. The only other explanation is that I'd have to be sleepwalking and moving the chair, which is also unlikely. Other events. Now, what follows are other events that mostly happened to my mother, but they're not in any chronological order, just the events that we know that happened. Event number 1. On at least 3 different occasions, my mother claims she heard somebody say "Mom" right in her ear as she was walking up the stairs to her room. I asked her if she's sure because the sound "Mom" is not a long one, but she assured me that it was clear. Event number 2. One time, my mother was getting ready to go to work. She was in the stairway, lacing her boots, and she claims that she felt an unnatural coldness, like a freezer, she said, passing through her sideways. If it were a ventilation problem, it would have re-happened, but it didn't. Event number 3. Once my mother came back from work and had to rush to the bathroom. She put her cell phone on the kitchen counter and went there. While she was there, she heard something fall. Once done, she saw her cell phone had been pushed off the counter. The most plausible explanation to that is maybe the cat, but knowing that cat, it's hard to believe. That cat couldn't displace air if she tried. She always was super careful with her every step. Event number 4. My mother claims she once heard the side door open and close exactly if it was back from school, or me coming back from school. She waited for me to go down that stair, but I never did. She went to go see, and the door was closed and locked. Event number 5. On October 10th, 2018, I know because I wrote it when it happened. I was on my bed and heard the front door open. I thought it was my mother coming back from work. I heard footsteps outside of my room, the kitchen, and the faucet was turned on. Went out of my room to greet my mom, but when I opened the door, there was no one but the faucet had been opened midway. About 5 to 10 minutes later, my mom was back from work and I asked her why she went back outside. She didn't understand. She said that she had just arrived. I asked her, then who used the faucet? We looked at each other confused and laughed it off. The most plausible explanation is that it would have been my grandmother upstairs that used the faucet. But there's a few problems with that one. First, my grandma has her own door. In 13 years, I never heard it open once from my room. Secondly, every time she goes downstairs is to talk to someone. She makes her presence known and does not exactly linger. Third, not only she would have been using the faucet, she never does, but she would have used it and left it running, which she never did before and after, and she's 93 today and can still drive. Plus, if her faucet had a problem, she would have let us know. Fourth, more of an anecdote, but Christian Page, a well-known paranormal investigator from Quebec, where I'm from, claims on his website to have slept he and his girlfriend in an apparently haunted hotel room. In 2 days, nothing happened except one thing. The faucet had been left opened midway. Event number 6. My mother and my new stepfather, let's call him Bob too, were back from the bar and decided to make food. They were eating in the dining room, and they're at the dining room table, and it was around 1 a.m. Both of them claimed to have heard someone growl loudly next to the stairwell. That's where most of the strange things happen. Once again, 2 adults heard the same thing at the same time, so it makes it less likely to be a hallucination. And if it were something natural, then it's something that would have re-happened. Event number 7. Bob, too, was sleeping on the couch in the living room. He was woken up by a strange bang near the stairwell. When he told my mom, he had said that something had happened before. However, I wasn't really made aware of this. Event number 8. Around 2 to 3 years ago, I woke up one morning feeling well. I opened the door to my room, made 2 steps in the kitchen, and froze in the living room. Right behind the kitchen counter, I saw what I can only describe as an apparition. It was a human outline with no feature. The inside of the body was transparent and blurry. It had yellowish-colored spots on its chest. You'd think I would shit my pants, but nope. I was more intrigued than anything. In my mind, it was like, okay, another strange thing's happening here. I was looking at it, and it was seemingly looking at me, and then turned and went to the corridor. The whole thing lasted about 5 seconds, and when it was over, I just laughed and said, okay, what the fuck have I just seen? I don't take drugs. I don't smoke. I wasn't sick, tired, or injured, and I was wet when I saw this ghost. I thought it might have been hypnagogic hallucination, but I actually had one recently, and that thing I saw does not fit the bill. Only explanation I can imagine, and might be ridiculous, I remember that around the same time I witnessed a surprisingly violent accident inside of a bus. There was no blood, a man wasn't seriously injured, and he eventually stood up, but I was shocked. Now, I don't remember the timeline correctly, but let's imagine that I saw the ghost the day after. Could it be that I was so shocked that my brain somehow made me hallucinate the morning after? Sounds insane, but this is the only thing I can imagine. That or a random DMT leak from my brain. Which can happen. Surely nonsense, but when you know nothing, you don't even know what can make sense. Event number 9. Last summer, 2024, my mother was in the swimming pool and she was talking to my grandma who was in the doorway of the patio. Suddenly, while they were talking, they heard some sort of noise, like a growl coming from inside. My grandma, who was never made aware that there might be spirits in the house, turned to look inside the house, confirming that the sound did come from the house. Didn't understand. My mother laughed. Event number 10. One night as she was attempting to sleep alone in her bed, my mother claimed she felt someone with her, as if someone was getting right over her. Looking at Google, the result I got was she was a victim of the incubus syndrome. Thing that happens to 1 woman out of 11 in their lifetime. Wow, that's a high statistic. She assured me that it was weird, but nothing out of Hollywood. However, not too long after that, my mother got a call from my sister. "Mom, I have something to tell you." She also had the same thing happen to her. Now, during the short time that my sister lived with us, it happened. 2 people had that happen to them at the same place during the same period. What are the odds? Experience number 11. That night, my mother woke up to go to the bathroom next to her door. When going there, she heard 2 knocks on the wall next to her. She was scared, but didn't react. When coming back, there was 3 knocks. She got so scared that she actually lost her footing and fell on her bed in sort of a comical way. So, while I do hope that spirits are actually real, I know that despite the several statistical impossibilities, none of these are proof, but what else are we supposed to think? That by moving here, we all randomly became schizophrenic? Maybe we're all mad, but only when we're in this house? Or that by being in this house, anybody can be subject to neurological tomfoolery? If the concept of spirit had not been created or discovered, we would have made it. It's easy to think that we might be scared and nervous and that we might lack judgment. Maybe that's why we had so many strange shit happen to us. And it all happened by the power of suggestion, but no. These events all happened. We were all calm and going about our daily business. I, for one, actually did not care about the events. They were unsettling when they were happening, but that was it. Even if the quote-unquote apparition I saw I nearly forgot about, these events become important for me recently because I had a major existential death anxiety crisis and it was the worst thing I ever went through. But we even played Ouija for the first time in our life last October. Nothing happened. If we all made it up by ourselves, something would have certainly happened. In quotes. Also, not really proof of anything, just a comical detail. When we moved in, I have no memory of it, but my mother told me that the people before us had placed angel statues near the windows, and that they left 2 letters in drawers saying things like, "We welcome you and we bless this house." As of now, our house is not even 20 years old, and we're just the 3rd tenants. Lastly, I will end with this. If spirits are real, then there are 2 things that we can say about them. 1, that they are a rare occurrence, and 2, that they're kind of an ambiguous thing. Since they are so rare and unidentified, could it be that a ton of things were wrongly attributed to them and got debunked, and rightly so? So much so that, in time, we become conditioned to think that they can't exist. If spirits are real, then it only makes sense that the scientific explanations are such a hair-puller. What do you guys think? A little bit similarly to you. A little bit. Just wanted to share my story. This is the very first time I'm talking about this, and I think I'm in the right place. First of all, I still don't know whether my mind was playing tricks on me or if everything that happened was actually caused by another being. I was around 12 years old, and as a child, instead of sleeping at night, I would play with my imagination in my head. The visual images I envisioned back then were incredibly vivid. I often imagined having superpowers and defeating villains. While fantasizing at night, I would often unknowingly enter a meditative state. Many times, scary images were placed into my mind. Now, at 29 years old, I realized that the way these images and information were sent to my mind was unlike anything else I've ever experienced. Looking back, it was exactly as if something had taken over me and wanted to scare me, simply because it enjoyed doing so. The feeling of being mocked describes it quite accurately. It always started with this strange sensation. I closed my eyes. It felt as though I was extremely far away from myself, almost as if I could barely control my own body. The next thing I remember is that if, for example, I rested my hand on my stomach, it felt as if my hand was sinking into my body. I'll never forget that sensation. Shortly after, the sharp, vivid images of monstrous faces would appear, all of them hysterically laughing. What's strange is that one night it became so intense that I ran crying to my mother, who was still awake in the living room. TV was on, showing a live concert of a Muslim singer. But when I looked at the TV, the singer appeared to look like a devil, and the music sounded like metal. This was the first time that I had this kind of hallucination, and shrooms are a joke compared to this, by the way. It took about 20 minutes for it to stop, and after that night, it all ended. To this day, I never believed in anything supernatural, but now looking back, I know that someone or something caused it. What do you think? I think there might be something in my house. Hi y'all, new here, but I thought this would be a good place to talk about what's been happening in my house. A little bit of a background on me and the house. First, I've been feeling things since I was a child. Nothing I can prove, but just weird things out of the corner of my eye, or hearing movement behind me. My brother also experienced things his whole life. He was one of the only people I would talk about with these things. He passed away almost 10 years ago. Second, I bought a house with my partner about 4 years ago. He doesn't believe in the paranormal at all, but doesn't really mind when I burn rosemary or do other witchy things. Third, after I bought the house, I learned from the neighbors that the original owners did die in the house. Nothing spooky. They were an elderly couple that each separately passed away in their sleep. With all that being said, since we have moved in, I've been feeling things. I'm not very scared of whatever it is, but it spooked me at times. The worst being at night when I was heading to bed. The lights were dim, but I could see well enough to know my partner was walking down the hallway in front of me. I could see and hear him shuffling ahead of me. He has a distinct walk and shuffle when he's barefoot. The bedroom was completely dark when I heard him whisper something, and I replied with, "What?" He replied from the kitchen, yelling down the hallway. I ran from the room into him. He checked the room and teased me a little about being scared. I've also seen shadows moving from the kitchen to the hall while sitting in the couch. So many times I basically lost count. Sometimes when I'm in the basement, it's like not really a spooky basement, it's finished. I can hear things moving in the back room. Thought maybe it was mice or something, but dozens of empty traps later, it clearly isn't pests. I'll find little things moved, things like my craft scissors. I know it isn't my partner, as he knows how to use them after running a pair of sewing scissors. My dog, who's never done anything like this, will growl at the empty black room randomly. She isn't a barker or a growler. She won't go into that room. A little bit jealous of your dog. I don't think whatever's happening is dangerous, but I would appreciate any advice on a way to make peace with it. And no, I can't afford to sell the house and move. The encounter that made me fully believe. For years, I felt that paranormal was only something you saw in movies and TV shows. Don't get me wrong, I've always thought that these things were not outside the realm of possibility. I just never had something to affect me so directly that I saw it as undeniable proof. It was just a few years ago now. I was walking back to my room from my parents after talking to them. There's 2 halls in my house that connect in the shape of an L. My house is right at the joint, or rather, my room is right at the joint of the L. And as I entered the connecting hallway at that joint, I heard very clearly and very distinctly my name whispered right into my right ear. It was clear enough that I could almost feel the breath on my ear. At first, I assumed it to be one of my family members, but it was quickly ruled out as my 2 siblings were asleep in their rooms and nowhere near me. It was so startling that I just jumped forward and spun around, slamming my back into the wall to look to see who said my name. After calming down a bit, I realized another thing about this voice. It was the voice of a young girl. The only woman in my house is my mother, and she was in her room in bed reading. Nowhere near me. I have no sisters, nor were there any other girls in our house then or now. It was a voice I didn't recognize either, so it wasn't me imagining someone else's voice. There's no way to explain it for me. Even now, thinking about it, I feel a chill up my spine. And since then, I've not had another encounter like that in my home. I'm unsure how to explain it. I heard it so clearly. Did I imagine a real ghost during a friend's prank? I'm 28 now, and this happened over a decade ago when I was in middle school. To this day, it stays with me. It's never felt right. In middle school, I had a close friend. Let's name her Beth. Beth and her father were extreme horror and Halloween fans, to the extent that they had an entire garage filled with horror and Halloween decorations and collectibles. They also had a collection of horror movies banned in other countries and won awards for the scariest haunted house in their neighborhood during Halloween, which they always hosted for free every year. Often I would spend the night there, which of course always ended in a scary movie or two. It was also common for them to play pranks on me and scare me because they found it funny. I would usually yell and jump, of course, but thought it was all in good fun. One particular night, we finished watching a movie. Then, me and Beth went to her room to hang out before bed. We played some video games, chatted like usual. At one point, she brought up the fact that the previous owner of their house died in the home. An older man who hung himself from a fan. She said sometimes they'd notice some voices or see things out of place. The discussion was very nonchalant on her end, but I was finding myself pretty creeped out. Later, when we had settled into bed, I couldn't sleep, and as I was tossing and turning, I kept hearing what sounded like heavy footsteps outside the room. Beth was just sleeping. And suddenly, there was a loud bang that startled me. I woke her up frantically before getting up and turning on the light. Beth kept asking me what was wrong, and I was panicking, telling her the things I'd been hearing, and then as I spoke, something hit my foot. Looking down, I saw a piece of paper that had been slid beneath the bedroom door and bumped into my foot. I picked it up, and it's simple writing it said, "You don't belong here." I tossed the paper at Beth and yanked the bedroom door open. No one was there. I even insisted she go check on her father in the room beside us. And when we did, he was in bed. I settled back into her bed, sitting up and leaning against the wall. At this point, I couldn't sleep. Kept telling her if this was a prank, it wasn't funny. Beth continued to insist that it wasn't, and she joined me in bed again, and we both heard those loud footsteps, followed by a repeated banging noise. I was nearly crying at this point, as it had been happening for over an hour now. What broke me, however, was after the third time hearing the loud banging. I heard a deep male voice in my ear telling me to get out. Terrified me. I started sobbing, yelling that I wanted to call my mom and I was going home. Beth quickly left to get her dad. They both came in to reassure me that it was in fact a prank. He said he'd tossed the letter beneath my door and that he had speakers in the bedroom playing noises that I heard. He even played them again for me using a remote to see, except none of the noises included a voice. I felt unsettled, but just accepted that it was a prank and tried to get rest before leaving the next morning. That's a dick move, but kind of funny. However, to this day, I don't have an explanation for the voice. I did confirm with Beth that yes, the previous owner did in fact die in their home, but nothing had ever happened to her or her father. The voice I heard also wasn't in the recordings he showed me, and even if it was, it just wouldn't have made sense. The speakers they showed me were at the window in front of me, several feet away. I'd been leaning against the wall on my right and heard that deep voice in my right ear, as if someone was practically on top of me, speaking into it. To this day, I can hear the voice loud and clear. Never forgot how it made me feel. I was immediately unsettled and a chill had gone through me. It just felt wrong. Never slept over at Beth's house again, nor did I have another incident. But I'm hoping that whatever I heard and felt was simply the imagination of a scared middle school girl. I believe that is what that was. Something on my head. I'll start by saying that I do not do drugs. I have no kind of head trauma, and all the doctors I've seen in the past 5+ years have never indicated any kind of neurological or psychological problem. It feels like there's something that hangs out on my head. I can't see or touch it, but I can feel the weight of it shift around. Seems to be the most active at bedtime. Sometimes I can feel something pushing or pulling at me. It would feel as if I took my hand and laid it on your head and directed you where you were going to look, but can't reach up and touch the hand. When it first happened, I thought I was legitimately losing my mind. Now that it's been happening for years, I ask myself, are things better or worse than they were? And every time the answer is better. And sometimes I feel like it's a guardian angel, but I don't like to put my thinking in a box and leave it there. What I imagine is some kind of creature that's been taking a liking to me. I really don't know. I'm not sick or in distress, just curious. I prayed for whatever this thing is to be revealed to me, and I just don't think it can be seen by our eyes or interacted with, but can perhaps interact with us to a point. That's different. Healthcare worker hauntings. Any of my fellow healthcare workers have experiences? I'd feel like the best stories I've heard have occurred in hospitals or nursing homes. Yeah, I sort of second that. I have a few, but here's my favorite experience I shared with a coworker. I worked trauma ICU for years, and as you can imagine, we saw horrific and heartbreaking situations. We saw many deaths that were unexpected. I worked night shift mostly. On this occasion, it was a middle-aged woman who was run over by a train. Surgery was attempted, but she ultimately succumbed to her injuries when she was in the ICU. My coworker and I were doing post-mortem care. We were cleaning her up the best we could before bagging the body and taking her down to the morgue. This room had large windows, and I remember looking outside the city skyline as my coworker was trying to toe tag. Or tying on the toe tag. Excuse me. There was a figure standing between us and in the window reflection. I remember blinking a few times, thinking maybe my eyes were misinterpreting the reflection of my coworker and I. But there she was, a woman that looked just like the patient standing in between us. She was moving her shoulders like she was sobbing. My coworker noticed me looking out the window and looked for herself. I could also see her blinking, trying to make sense of what she saw. We then turned to each other as if to see if she could see something physically standing between us. We saw nothing. Turned back to the window reflection and the figure was gone. Took a break in post-mortem care after that. Mimic in our brand new house. Hi all, my roommate and I are young girls living alone in our college townhouse neighborhood. The house was built no later than maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and that's pushing it. Lots of weird stuff has been happening, and last night it all came to a head. We're all Christian and grew up Catholic, so we're all very much believing in spirits and demons and the power of Christ to defeat them. I had a dream maybe a couple of months ago of my dog growling at an evil presence. I rebuked it in a dream and in the name of Jesus and woke up suddenly because my white noise was off and it was 3:33 a.m. I wasn't too totally terrified, but then my coworker came over and said that she swore she heard me banging around in the back of the house when I wasn't home. And it keeps happening. I always hear my roommate banging around in her room when she's not home, like we'll hear knocking on the walls, and I've heard my dog wrestling around in his kennel when he's right next to me. And so I thought, maybe it's an animal. Until last night. Last night I'm sitting on the couch doing homework and watching TV. I let out like a low whistle, and I immediately hear it repeated back to me. Again, all alone, so I just rewinded the TV to see if it was just a really well-timed coincidence, and there was zero whistling. So I call my sister, who lives 3 houses down. I call her to come over. She runs over and doesn't see anyone outside around the house. So then, naturally, I go through the house with my industrial wasp spray can, nice choice, and check to make sure no one's in the house. I would hate to be that person. I come back to where my sister is and say, "Don't whistle right now, I'm freaked out." But I didn't whistle at all. She heard my whistle again. My roommate finally comes home, but I tell her what happened and I leave, offering her to come with, but she says she's fine and wants to go to bed. Then she texts me in around an hour and says, "You back home?" And I say, "Nope." She tells me she's hearing me talking this whole time, and I just yelled, "Yoo-hoo," trying to get her attention. So she heard me talking too. So obviously, something's in the house, and my question is, as Christians, what do we do? How do we get rid of it, and can we get rid of it? TIA. I saw a shadow woman in my kitchen. This was a usual night for me, late at night playing the game, no lights on, and the only person awake. Had to have been playing with my buddy for hours at this point, and both of us were tired, and it was already 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, so we hopped off. I was thinking of doing the same, so I was just sitting in the home screen about to turn off the Xbox, till I hear my name get called out from behind me. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me. To be fair, I was half awake. so I gave it no mind. Then again I hear Aiden. When I heard this, it woke me up like I just got water thrown on me. I'm sitting on the couch staring kind of behind me in a pretty much pure darkness, waiting to see something for like a solid minute. Eventually I snap out of it and say, "Mama?" No response. So I start walking to my mom's room, and I get there and you have to walk past the kitchen, and that's when I see it. A silhouette of a woman sitting on the ground, back to the wall, knees to her chest and hands covering her face. I didn't know what to think, I just froze. When I finally snapped out of it, I just full-on sprinted toward my room, and me and my mom's room is pretty much right next to each other's, and I slammed the door, got underneath my covers. Then my mind starts to try and make an understanding of all this. Was I seeing things, or was there really something in the kitchen, and who was that? None of it made sense. There couldn't have been anyone there. I was sitting in the living room right by the front door. I had to have been seeing things. But then it hit me. It said my name. How could it have known my name? Somehow I ended up sleeping that night, and I still don't know what to believe years later. We moved out of that place. Nothing's happened since.